Hey guys, welcome back to some more AFK Arena. Today we're back over on the free-to-play account, and the season has officially ended for the Pure Realm. So overall, I want to break down a guide and look at some of the teams that were available in here and show you kind of where we've come with this iteration of the Treasure Scramble, because we know this was a brand new buff, and this was the first time that we've seen this for the max health within these heroes. So I want to break it down and show you kind of what the teams look like over here, and breaking it down from Manuel and Rockaday. It is very cool. So these are the top average teams from rank 10 to 20, from region 10 to 40. That is right, guys. There are a crazy amount of regions, as we know right now. Also a lot of different teams. So what happens in here is you will notice the breakdown of the team itself. Now there's a couple different substitutes in here that we've seen in a couple days, and I do want to show and really stress some of the subs in here and where we have seen a couple different heroes and which ones have been very pivotal. So looking at our very first team, this is a brand new team that kind of has risen with the awakened version of Lucius and Leviathan being run together. They go together like peanut butter and jelly. They are doing incredibly well, and really a lot of the survivability issues that we have seen with the awakened version of Lucius kind of is offset by Leviathan and his skills and abilities, and then further offset right here by Gavis with, again, kind of that damage mitigation factor he puts in. They do work incredibly well. We can see the trickery chest over here. And if you do not have Leviathan, which I know a lot of players do not have, the Highborn Draconic heroes, we were running Jerome in here. Now, if you guys remember, Jerome was actually running here quite a while ago when we had the awakened version of Lucius. They do, again, go together very well. And also looking at some of the additional, because remember, Jerome does buff up light bearers, so Lucius will get a significant higher buff out of Jerome because it is a light bearer. Then you also see that we have Lavatune in here. We also have Telmar. Now, this is interesting because with the brand new Mauler being a support, we have been seeing her everywhere. There have been so many iterations, there have been so many game modes that she is just falling right into, which is awesome to see for a brand new regular 4-faction hero to have as much utility as we've been seeing with her. And of course, it does come with a plus 30 signature item, but also with the 60 engraving is the big part of her. 9 of 9 furniture, kind of mandatory on any hero at this point. And you can see the core unit. So this is actually who makes up the core team itself, where if you're missing Lucius, it is an entirely different team that you're going to go in here. Leviathan works at Mythic S40. Telmar is a decent sub for Goran. Goran, of course, being in here, if you built him out, he's another one where with the energy that he brings out of formations, with his meals and everything else, again, the last two Maulers in here have been pretty decent. We know we're waiting for the awakened version of Scrath and seeing exactly what that looks like. So 57 total appearances, which is quite high. Now looking in here, remember, looking at our collections right here is defense. Then we have the HP, which we know very imperative to the shielding aspect that we do get out of this collection. And then we do have the erosion on there, full attack with magical pierce, which works incredibly well. And you'll notice a lot of these are the level 3 collections itself, making it really important to build them out. Now looking at level or number 2 or team number 2, the awakened version of Chimera, and we do have the awakened version of Estrilda. Now Estrilda is going to cast the armor on the entire team, which is going to amp the damage up that Scion has. Then we also do have Demia in here, which will keep Scion alive. And then we have the shielding aspect of Ivan in here, again, working incredibly well. We do have our Winged Owl up there. We have Misha, we have Melion. Melion, of course, will buff Scion. So depending exactly who you do have built and what your formations do look like, it's going to make a really big difference. Now, Scion needs a full investment to be effective. The more damage he deals, the bigger the shield on Estrilda will become. Now, Estrilda, very similar to Chimera, they are driven by HP. This buff that we get within this Treasure Scramble is driven by HP. So the next iteration we see in this, you have to remember that when you're building them out, makes really big difference in here, guys. And then, of course, Demia, you got some attack right there. And you'll notice some of these do overlap on a bunch of different places. Like even looking here, we have the HP and the full attack. And of course, we have the level 3 Noki collection right in there. And then even when we look at our damage dealing collections with the physical pierce or the crit damage amplification, a lot of those do overlap, meaning that you can have 2, 3, even 4 heroes that are wearing that exact same collection. 29 total appearances in there. Absolutely love it. Now, this one, really tough. So in here, we do have Olna, and then we have Skyland. For a lot of players, including myself, I do not have Skyland. So this actually forced me to sub in the Awakened version of Eron because Scion was actually used in the other team. Did work very well with that sub in there with the Awakened version of Eron and the crowd control. Survivability, of course, offset by Olna in there. Then we have Sophia. So interesting enough, the SP effect being run on there. We have Lan, then we have Kregor. Now, a lot of players were kind of seeing that the Awakened version of Leica did work incredibly well in here versus running Kregor. But if you did build out, if you do have him built out pretty decently, the shielding aspect of the collection he does wear, plus the full attack in there. And again, this collection kind of being run a couple different places, one with HP, one also with that full attack in there, making a big difference. And then we do have the attack rate here that we're running on Lan. Now, overall, Highborn Draconic Heroes, as it sits today, I feel like Lan is still the big priority, followed very closely by Leviathan. That could change in the future just because it's a support versus a tank. Now, one thing to note over here, Theramir works well with Skyland because of the burst damage that is in there. The Skyland Awakened Like a variation got 9 appearances, so very close to what we see there. And again, this is going to make a very big difference on who you have built and also what collections you do have available. Getting into team number 4, it is the Steel team. Now, this is one that a majority of players have really grown to love. And it's funny because this is one of the toughest teams and one of the most difficult teams. I see a lot of comments over on YouTube about how do we counteract this team because the Seal just runs over everyone. Because in here, guys, the Awakened version of Thorin, just insanely hard to kill. Aileen will always come back to life. Even looking at Alvida, again, incredibly hard to kill. Nox will run around when you have an E60, and again, super hard to kill. If you happen to kill Mira, she comes back. And if you do not have the original version of Taylene, Flora can go in there, and of course, she will stay up in the air until all of the cycle of these heroes are completely gone. The Seal is the damage dealer in here. That is the powerhouse. And you're noticing here it is going full attack and insight with a lot of these, just offering some crowd control. Essentially, the Seal will burn through everybody, which is, in my opinion, kind of broken in a lot of AFK arena, but it does still work incredibly, incredibly well. Now, team number 5, we get into Shell tier. Now, I know there are a lot of players, and there are a lot of players that are kind of upset that Shell tier has actually not made her way into the garrison. So, unfortunately, if you did not pick her up, there isn't a way in the classic version that I'm aware of to get her. This is another one where if you don't have Matria, I probably wouldn't build her out at this point. We also do have Hildwyn in here, Theramira, and then we do have Zora with the SP effect being run with Panda Dumpty. Again, a lot of players wonder why Amelia is still being used. There are a few places that Amelia still pops up. And of course, if you don't have every hero within AFK Arena, it still goes in here. Some people use the SPM Matria, some are using Zora. There's no consensus on the 50 appearances that we've seen in here. Then we get into Team 6. This is interesting, guys, because as you can see, we are running a lot of dims and also running out the number 1 priority hero, which is Envy, that you want to build out ASAP. He is a hero that can absolutely just destroy teams in their entirety. When you're adding in a lot of crowd control, even looking at the Ice Crown, Envy will just burn down with that SP effect, amplifying the damage, being able to just cut everyone in half. And even looking here, guys, we have Sun Jin Woo still running Rem, still running Shuna, even looking at Albedo still being run in the formation. And Shuna is one as a support hero, as a dim. I feel like a lot of players have kind of underestimated. I know Rimuru was super strong for a little bit, and Shuna was actually doing incredibly well, and she has had the staying power. Unfortunately, with Rimuru, most of the formations at this point are not using him. And then we have Velfira, which again, as a support hero, as a really overall crowd control, it does work incredibly well. Now, looking at Misha, Misha is one that defense has to be as high as possible. And then we do have Sun Jin Woo in here, so seeing again another kind of pickup right there. And you'll notice again these collections kind of overlapping in a bunch of different places. Team number 7 and our final team is running the Awakened version of Athalia. Again, a very strong hero that is used in a ton of different places. The exact same can be said with Liberta. And overall, looking in here, I do not have Halia. I know most players do not because we got Skyland and Halia really, really close to each other. But you can see Lucila still being run with Liberta, working incredibly well. And right here, guys, Lysander is being run in a lot of meta formations as it sits right now. I feel like tier list wise, he's going to be moving up, even the priority to build moving up. But the one thing to note with him is even at a very, very basic level, his ability still does function as it should. It still does work incredibly well. Even thinking on the free to play account, I am still running him with a very basic form and it works incredibly well. Then, of course, we have Leica in here. We have the Pelican in here and a couple other ones. Lysander needs high physical Pierce collection if played in position 4, which we know is the king position in the middle. Leica is a viable substitute for Halia, which again, I know a majority of players do not have Halia just because of the sheer cost to build them out. But again, you look at a lot of these collections, most of them do overlap in one or two ways. And honestly, even when you look here, we have Envy's collection with attack and physical Pierce. Here's physical Pierce. Even looking at Scions with physical Pierce, building out what you can get. And I know collections for a lot of players are still incredibly difficult to get through, including myself. I know there is a very, very big hurdle that AFK Arena still needs to come when it comes to collections overall. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.